When God incarnates into a being to speak to the world, it is likely to say that most of them still maintained most of their human qualities. But let me speak about a story into the hypothetical that it is, to create a little philosophy for something that I really appreciate. And it is the theme that creates a character that in its dying moments gave you the greatest show of strength while delivering the greatest mercy within a span of 3, almost 4 days. That story, like others, has been the theme for most who are connected to that story as well, as they sometimes end up being. I've noticed that sometimes the attachment to a label to identify you as a character in any way would play part in the psychology that attaches you to the outcome. That recreates the theme for a story that I find great, because it's hard to deny 500 Romans during a historical moment that was recorded for all to see, to witness the death of a man accused of heresy, hypocrisy, blasphemy, and, if not the worst crime of all, just too good for words. So when it went into its silence, the story goes, it did not cry out when it was done. It was done. That was the greatest show of strength. The greatest show of mercy was when that voice of God that had incarnated for that being spoke out. It is finished. Forgive them. They didn't know what they were doing. It is finished. So they say. What it was referring to was not life the play, but that moment he knew he was going. It's done. I'm going out. God, the Father, according to the story, during its wake / rebirth, cracked the earth. Well, timing is a thing here too. So you could call it a coincidence, or the irony would play out for you. It also said that a being of light shrouded in darkness was casting bolts in the sky when he left. But today, you couldn't really say that without getting into some sort of trouble, because you sound like you're high on drugs. Nice trip, man. Don't do that. It doesn't negate the fact that science today could support a physical being to recreate that scenario in a world that's not too far from our own. But I digress, because it's not about that. It's about the story, the hypothetical, and its fictional truth, because every story has a little bit of the truth attached to it. This one just happened to be with 500 Romans somewhere around AD BC. And now here we are with me. So, the greatest show of strength, the greatest show of mercy, and then it was gone. Now I've questioned the events afterward. words a few times. I don't need to anymore. Around 30 years after the mark, we were right back where we were. They used the silence to become comfortable, I suppose. Which didn't take long because humans are forgiveful. And God does not forget anything from beginning to end. All things in every perfect way of it being itself is remembered by that being. And when we are done, you will see what it means to let go and be with it also. Surrender. To be in complete surrender to that story is another topic entirely. What I'm saying is surrender to an observation I made in myself, which is connected to my truth. Coincidentally, can't give it to you because it belongs to me on one of those adventures, except I find it in my dreams. Sometimes, where I'm sitting, if I chose, I could meditate into those places at will, which is nice sometimes. Just depends on what I need to see and what's going on. So, like, you go to work 9 to 5, I do the same thing, and I do it at that level. Most complain because they don't call that a job. Well, I don't do it for money. You got that right. I do it because that's natural to me, and I couldn't even turn it off if I tried. I wouldn't want to. There's that, because I find comfort in what I'm saying. So back to my point. That's where I found it. And it came from the words that manifest through a being who incarnate with that being who is all being itself. Does it speak? No, that's our job, if we are brave enough. But it's not about being brave today, because we don't need to be afraid. That's the first step. Once you get there, everything else works. You had no fear in the first place. You had to wonder how they did it. Well, that's how. Now it's more of a what is happening. Well, that is happening. And it didn't need you to speak for it to be happening. Your choices are free from the happening to happen also. It is not something written in stone, though you could say some of you are attached to that story still, as if it is. Now that is your name. That's what I was referring to earlier, as to let go of something, if you could. Let go of that now. You don't need it. You will still have it. You will still be bound to it. And its adventures are not invaluable, but to give value to something that's already happened and try to recreate it, well, that's like trying to reinvent the wheel. Don't do that. There's only one God, if there was ever such a thing. For those of you who do not entertain this thought, it shouldn't be anything to say it's not a problem for you now also, because logically I can see where you're coming from. The thing is, if you're going to be half in and half out of something, you might not need it when you're done. So if you find that when you're done and you do, here's this little bit of information for you. It's okay. We know. That was hard. It's easier to ignore that to do what you're doing now. Again, if it were that easy for me, I would be doing it also. I once was. But as a child, I did things that I didn't understand. Nobody could explain it. And now as a man, I understand. I'm doing now, also, in ways that are significant to me, very unique, fiercely unique, individual. It's not something we fight over because you don't want to be me. That's why you are you now. To find your uniqueness, you simply sit with yourself, go into the breath, and surrender yourself to all things. It's like experiencing death, except you're just walking through a door into yourself. And it will show you what you need to see for yourself personally. That's not for everyone else. That's what I know. Some of us come out of it not understanding that also, like myself did in the past, and will vehemently surrender to ideas that no longer serve you, the person, the individual, or myself, and vice versa, because myself had to understand that first and went through the pain to express this, so you'd have to understand that I'm not going to argue with myself about that either. Into my uniqueness, that would be a conflict of myself in my own interest to be with me and conflicted about my thoughts. That's terrible, but it happens. So when that happens, that's what it's for. And you keep doing till you find a way to settle with the words, with your emotions, everything. It just makes sense to let go of something that has already happened. We're not reinventing the wheel. So back to the hypothetical / truth. Logic is good until there isn't any. In a situation where there is none, you have to find a bridge between this world and theirs. I find that easy to do with numbers, personally. 0 through 9, or 1 and 0, because 10 and 11, but I learned that through other methods of mathematics, I guess, to ascertain logic and combine it with a bridge. Well, that's where games come in, to be fair. But when games become so competitive it hurts, that's not teaching anything if we don't care when we're done. Because competition ruins everything. It's no fun when you want to hurt someone else for not being as good as they are with the information they have there now. Which is where you are with yourself, because life is certainly not a game to me if people are dying around me for the words. So when God would manifest, like it did in me, 2019, then you give the words the best you may. It's a practice. You get better at it, like I am today. I've had years, 4 years to be exact. And it's an approximation, because time is a wobble. Anecdotal thought. We're all the same age. Time is the same age. Time has one age, from the beginning to end. That's it. And that's its age. So, that, and I admire the spirit of a story, even if it's not true entirely. The spirit of that story does have value to me because I found it in a place where I lost my logic. What you call a rebirth is a wiping of the mind. If you're going to shake something up, you have to rattle it pretty hard, especially if it's had 2,600 almost to 3,000, 4,000 years of hard, massive manipulation for human beings here on this planet. We weren't always like this, and we've been free from this paradigm of thought many times. And it's coming in and out of itself. The good news is the knowledge will not fail. The wisdom will not fail, and we are cycling into it faster, until it's all we know. The ins and outs and the wobbles for not knowing are for variable resistance. It's so that there's not so much friction. It destroys everything. It needs to happen perfectly, like baking a cake. It's all about timing. And then ding, with practice, you get a good one. You serve it, and everybody remembers. That was the first, best, and most amazing moment of their life. Here's another thing. Don't desensitize moments. Relive them as if they are fresh, brand new. You may. Don't be dull about your memories today. Find the best ones and hold them. Get rid of this negative thinking. If you had bad experiences, that's okay. We do need to let that go. All of you know why. That doesn't help you or anyone else. Plus, no one wants to hear it. So, in the spirit of something that isn't, but is, thanks. And for saving me from myself, thanks. To give me the words to help others save them, unique into their own experience as well. Stop sharing information about things that do not belong to reality. As far as the logic is concerned, it will not tolerate that zone if you do not bring some sort of bridge to the logic here now, like we are doing. Also, that's why I use numbers. So I have it. It's a great comfort to know that the wisdom did not fail, that your faith has hope, because I'm another example of why it exists. In full trust, I could not lie about this. I do not bear false witness. I could not. At this moment, if I did, it would be perilous to us all. If one fails, we all fail. I will not allow it. So, not knowing, not knowing, individuals lights on, mess, lights off, it's okay. Because those of you with lights on, guess what? That's hard. And some of you are going to scream about it. Some of you are going to cuss. Some of you might be just like it was with us. Male, female, doesn't matter. Could be a tree. But like a tree, it doesn't scream too much on the way down. It stands tall, it waits for a new season. If it gets too crowded, it deals with itself. It starts over like the pines do as well. It scatters its seed, comes back. No. Not every tree wants to grow so tall. So its limit is the sky, y'all. Because you only have so much of that to breathe. And there's a lesson to life about that also. However, we know to bridge these gaps, life teaches you things. Here in our chemistry set, certain creatures and beings can travel through the stars, not concerned with our way of it now. Still provided they have their life protected by the all-being being that created it now. That being is the breathing process. You connect to its source. You connect to it, of course, and that doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. So when you meet it, you need to be silent. That's my last bit of advice. Do not say anything. As beautiful as it is, don't even mention it. Of course it knows that. But if you've mentioned it, You've disturbed the silence. And I promise you will want to master your silence before you get to that again with me. Or you will have to come back and do it again. You see? So now, if you didn't, you do. That's not fiction. But some of it, like a bridge grew, out of that world where there was nothing, which is something always. It knew. It would catch up to me. So I could give the information back to you. The same way I gave it to you. Any way I've ever given it. Free. For my own good well-being. Not necessarily my pleasure. Though it is a pleasure to be beaten into this mold. It's not because I like pain. To be bold, it's because I'm alive, and I know why. That is my pleasure. That is what I'm breathing. That free air is something I earned. I did fight for that. But I will not fight any longer because it's not necessary. I found the wisdom in its truth. So if you've opened the book to take a look reading Rainbow, that's for you. And yes, it's about the master of the mind. It turns its pain off. I'm sure it grimaced, but could you imagine being ripped apart and not saying one word? Or screaming out, being nailed to a cross? Because that did happen to a lot of us who screamed out, grimaced in pain. Well, that one apparently did not. And was done when it was done, forgave us for we didn't know, and it obviously knew that. Some of us are remembering that also. So if you do not know, I wouldn't know today, but that's what it knew. So it's safe to say, when it's finished, it was done. So 30 years later, they were right back on the horse with everyone because humans were forgetful. What I think is interesting is how much we remember when we need to. Sometimes it's not about what we want, but when we need to, that's when it happens. And when you don't expect it to happen, that's when it happens most. Just when you give up. There it is. It's not going to fail you, but you need to learn to trust. Don't get angry. Don't smack the stone with your feet or your sticks. Stop. Breathe. Coexist. Bring harmony into our day. Sing songs of joy, not songs of pain. Stop playing with the monopolies. You know we didn't grow up like that. If most of you had your parents here today, they would not be happy with your results, and you know it. So find your heart in alignment with the ancestors of these thoughts. Their efforts are not in vain. There is kindness needed. It's not a bias, it's a surrendering to love. And it's seeing your brothers and sisters are every color, every race, every being, the planet, all planets, every firmament. The light into the darkness, there is no darkness, it's all light. So the sun sees all things because it is all things. The darkness could not see what's in the light because darkness sees nothing. But nothing is something, and the light has wisdom for the darkness. You are the light also. Grow up. And like that, a flame was lit for all to see. Thinking yourself, not me. Don't be angry either. That wasn't free. We fought for that. light the darkness. There is none. You gotta know, you are the light. I am.